Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 347. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPat89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this Tuesday morning?
Doing pretty well. Want to wish you and all our listeners a very happy Diwali. Belated a little bit.
Yeah, a couple days belated, but we are here. Happy Diwali to you also, and happy Diwali to everybody listening. We are going to talk about the Knicks losing to the Celtics and having beaten the Charlotte Hornets the previous day. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram, posting all kinds of new content on there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you already not done so already, please hit like, leave us a comment, and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise. I'm wearing one piece of it. You can find that on our website. That is at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it. We've got it. And the Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with the Prez. You also get access to the Strickland, not the Strickland mailbag anymore. No. We have rebranded it. It is now called Takes from Obvious Bozos, which is still hosted by Drew along with Zach Blatter. You submit your takes in our channel in the Discord, and Drew and Zach judge them, grade them, discuss them on the pod. That is the pod Takes from Obvious Bozos. You also got access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave with the Knicks more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our NFL podcast that is hosted by Constantine and Jeffrey Rasmussen. Check that out. They're doing great work on there. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, $100 tier that's come with a variety of additional benefits like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and you potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly whether you choose to subscribe or not. It be possible without you. And it doesn't be possible without BetOnline. The last of the major pro sports leagues kicks off this weekend. BetOnline is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL, and college football and NHL in full swing, BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. Get everything NBA at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access for every sport anytime. Head to the BetOnline app today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Knicks lose to the Celtics last night, 114-98. No RJ Barrett. He had migraines prior to the game, so he did not play. Jalen Brunson had 26 on 21 shots. Julius Randle, 25 on 19. Emmanuel quickly, not a great game for him. One of 10 from the field, just 7 points. Did chip in with 6 rebounds, but need more from him, especially in a night when RJ Barrett's gone. Josh Hart stepped up decently well. He had 16 points on 12 shots, 9 rebounds. Quentin Grimes did not get going, but he did finally decide to take some shots in the third quarter, and good for us because he ended up with 12 points. On just six shots. I don't know. I thought the Knicks competed pretty well. I know there are people that are talking about and I know there have been a lot of people like, oh, we got to figure out their offense. I don't really know what you're supposed to do against the Celtics offense, especially given the Knicks' personnel limitations, especially with RJ Barrett gone yesterday, or out yesterday, I should say. I thought they defended fine. You're going to give up points to Boston, is what it is. And I thought Tatum just made a lot of tough shots yesterday. So not much you can do about that other than tip your cap and move on. I don't know. I thought they competed hard. But I thought Brunson played really well to start the game, especially. Randall had a better game than he has had throughout much of the season. I still really question his decision making. I know the numbers look fine, but his situational awareness remains extremely problematic, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, look, you didn't get a good game from Quickly. It's really hard to make up for RJ Barrett being out if Quickly is not going. And it is what it is. They lost the game, but overall they're sitting at 5-5 now, 10 games in. So you're about an eighth of the way into the season. I guess, how do you feel about yesterday's game, and how do you just feel about where they are overall now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Macri said a few times, like I think he said at the start of the season and yesterday, I saw this clip going around where he's like, if they finish this stretch 5-5, you'll take it, right? They've played, besides I think Charlotte, every team looks like a playoff team. Atlanta's actually a pretty impressive win when you consider how they've looked. It's weird. It seems like besides that series, we've pretty much dominated Atlanta in the Thibs era. But in terms of last night, look, Tatum played like an MVP down the stretch. You can, if you want to lament that the Knicks don't have a 6'9" guy like Jaden McDaniels to guard him, fine. But this has been an elite defensive team. I thought they played pretty well on defense. That team is just, especially the people are putting, Mitch struggles against KP, and I think both times KP's had a good game. The thing is this, right? Like, if you want him to just stay out on the perimeter and lock up KP, we don't have a rim protector. And the Knicks need someone back there because Randall isn't the most reliable defender. I think Brunson has competed really well on defense, but he's got his limitations. You need him in the paint. You need Mitch back there. That's just a fact. So a guy like KP is always going to have some problems. I'm curious if there's some cross matches they can do. They put Brunson on KP a couple of times, and it was almost like deja vu seeing New York, Boston, and a small defender taking out KP's legs. But when it comes to Tatum, like that's just a guy playing like an MVP right now, and he hit some pretty ridiculous shots. On offense, so from a macro perspective, I'm not very concerned about the offense. They've played some really good teams. Cleveland was the top defensive team in the league last year. Even with Allen out, Mobley's a hell of a defender. Boston is playing, I think, right now, so far, it looks like the best team in the league on both ends, certainly on defense. So I'm not concerned from that perspective. As far as the game yesterday, I agree with you. I thought Brunson got off to a great start. And even in the second half, it seemed like he was getting mismatches and he was aggressive. The jumper was falling. He was getting to his spots. In a game where so many people were struggling, I would have liked to see him take more charge. We saw that's not exactly how it went. I'll say this on the offense. I think that Thibs has talked a lot about trusting the pass, moving the ball. I don't think that's lip service. We know that late in games he's going to revert a little bit to some of his tendencies, but I actually believe him when he says he wants to do those things. He wants the Knicks to play faster and share the ball. And I think a lot of the Knicks I think that's part of why Brunson probably you haven't seen that. Well, he had that 145-point game, but a game like last night, maybe last year, Brunson does try to take over down the stretch more. I think, people have lamented how many times the Knicks are pump faking, but they pump fake and cut, pump fake and move, right? When it works, it's a lot of guys buying into it. And I think all of the guys have bought into it 100% except for one. And I don't want to pile on Julius. It was a solid game last night, all things considered. But there's a lot of times where you'll see the way Julius wants to play is he wants to draw two guys, throw it, and have the player immediately shoot. So it's very frustrating when Grimes especially doesn't hold up that end of the bargain and then he pumps fakes and doesn't do anything. But a lot of times what happens is they'll pump fake. You see this with Quickly a lot and Hart to a lesser extent. They'll pump fake, drive, and then kick it back to Randall. And there was one play I remember, I think it was early in the fourth, that happened. Randall threw it to Quickly pump fake, drove, and then he gave it back to Randall on a handoff, and then Quickly was wide open behind him. Now it's directly behind Randall. Maybe he's not supposed to see, but he should feel that Quickly has a ton of space. That's a wide open three. Instead, Randall kind of forced a tough look. And that's it's almost like a little bit like Steph. It's like, yeah, you gave me the open shot and I passed on it, which isn't always great, but you keep moving. Now we build off of this. And you see the bench when they play with Hart and DiVincenzo and IQ all at the same time, they like to build off of those advantage. And because none of them is a great, that's kind of making up for the fact that none of them is a great individual advantage creator. But Randall is a great individual advantage creator. So I know it must be frustrating him when he kicks it out to someone who's open for three and they pump fake, but you have to keep building. It doesn't just mean that, they passed up their chance to shoot. So they're still working through that. I think that's something Randall will have to adjust to. and maybe it's getting late. And I don't want to absolve Quickly. I will say on Quickly struggles. I saw a couple people bring up the playoffs, and it's like when he plays good defenses, this is a team he dropped 38 on last year.
He dropped 24 on them the opening game this year. So
yeah, it's and if you looked at why he struggled last, he was just missing shots at the rim and layups. He had a couple of those high layups off the backboard. He does rely on them. It's always going to be part of his game that's a little bit more high variance than a guy like Ja just getting layups. But he just missed those. I thought his process was pretty good. I thought he did a good job navigating. He had a few assists he had a few good passes that the shot didn't fall and weren't assists. You need more from him. He needs that shots. That is what it is. But that's going to happen sometimes. From a process perspective, I didn't think this was remotely like the playoffs. And I did think he did a pretty good job of getting to his spots. That defense, all of those wings with KP out there is kind of a cheat code. So that's just a tough team.
On Quickly, I just thought him and Brunson really, as the game went on, it felt like they did not know how they wanted to attack Boston. Maybe some of that is because Boston started switching everything, and that kind of put a wrench into the Knicks' offensive works. But that's something they need to figure out. I thought
Brunson, when he attacked, was really successful, right? He had a couple of
he was.
Onto him. I just felt like he stopped going to that, right? That's what I would have done every time, but.
Yeah, it was odd. I don't know what happened exactly. Even at the end of the first half, he had a couple of possessions where Pritchard was on him, and then he called for a screen, but that obviously brought a more difficult matchup on him because they're switching it, and Pritchard is their worst defender. So I didn't really understand what was going on with him in terms of his thinking. There was also this weird stretch of 2 straight possessions in the third quarter where it was I think that was the Brunson, Quickly, Hart, DiVincenzo, Hartenstein group. And for some reason, Brunson brought the ball up and then swung it to Hart and then cleared out to the same side of the floor as Quickly. So then Hart was stuck initiating. They were able to make something out of nothing the first time, but then the second time, I think
Boston was also playing ball denial on Brunson and Quickly, and I would have liked to see both of them fight to get the ball a little bit harder in that. If Hart and DiVincenzo were...
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, but it looked like to me Brunson just kind of allowed it to happen. It was like, well, they're taking it away, so I'm just going to throw it to Hart and then clear out. And I mean, that was just stupid. The second time that it happened, Thibs pretty immediately called the timeout. So I don't know what was going on there, but that can't happen. That should never happen. Josh Hart should never be in a position to initiate offensive sets against a standstill half court defense. That's just stupid. So I don't know. They Quickly did not. I think, he went 0 for 5 in the first quarter, and then after that, it felt like he was very conscious of his shooting percentage and stopped trying to be aggressive. He can't have that, especially in a game against this team without RJ Barrett. He needed to keep, trying to look for his offense. He did get involved on the glass, which was good, and I thought his defense was good, but you need him to score in a game like this, and he just did not last night. So that is what it is. Brunson, again, really good start. I'm not sure what went on with him after kind of when he came back into the second quarter throughout the rest of the game. It just felt like he wasn't thinking or seeing the game the same way. Again, credit to Boston. They have a really good defense. They switched it up. They started switching everything. I'm not sure why that was so confusing for the Knicks, but it was. As far as the Julius thing, I don't know why anyone should have faith that he's going to all of a sudden see these passes that he's never seen before in his life, even though they're right in front of his face. If he does, cool, great, fantastic. But I'm not going to really hold my breath about it, and I'm not really thinking about it because I'm just assuming it's not going to happen. There's really no reason for it. I'm sure that there'll be people listening to this and be like, "Oh, well, Julius had 23, whatever the fuck he had. He had 23, 9, and 5, and he clearly was the Knicks' best player, and he was the reason why they were in the game." Sure. I mean,
I don't even think he was the best player on the Knicks, to be honest.
I don't think he played a particularly good game. I know he scored well. I agree. He scored decently well against a tough defense, so it was much better.
His defense on Brown was actually reasonably good as well. So
his defense on Brown on some switches was good. His overall defense was not good. He left multiple the first couple of possessions of the game, he was pretty atrocious. He also just left Hauser wide open multiple times. Did not rotate out.
Same thing happened against Norm Powell, by the way. A couple of those were
and Boston brought him into the action multiple times to try and target him. Not so much on switches. That I think that was like a Jaylen Brown special. But I think they were trying to get him to kind of, is he you're gonna have to hedge, you're gonna have to show, you're gonna have to drop, whatever it is. And they, once you do that, then you get the Knicks' defense scrambling. His effort to close out isn't always great. He had one really, it was a very poor effort to close out, I think, at the end of the first half on Jaylen Brown for a wing three that was just like, look, it's not an easy recovery, but he was extremely slow about it. Let's put it that way. But like, look, I don't even want to harp on the defense because I don't like the defense is what you expect it to be. And his offensive decision making, to me, honestly, at this point, it is exactly what I expect it to be. If he's going to make these decisions, he just has to be better. Like 7 of 19 for 25 points is fine. That's not a terrible offensive effort at all. It's actually pretty solid. But
he had 11 free throws, so I think.
But
it's Boston, so you're grading on a curve at that point.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I get 25 points on 19 shots, I'm not going to complain about it too much. But like, you would hope that it's better than that, given kind of like what you expect from him defensively overall, and some of his processing issues, and it wasn't. So that's really my biggest knock on him yesterday. He missed that really odd fast break opportunity where he was past Porzingis, and then he I don't know what exactly happened. Maybe that could be an example of his ankle kind of still being in the back of his mind or still affecting him, because it looked like he could have just gone up there to dunk it, and instead he tried to put up some weird underhand
Porzingis is also
thing.
Big fucking dude. That's part of it too.
Yeah, he's big, but come on. What the fuck was that? That was a terrible take. Either you're going to go up strong with there or I don't know. But whatever you're going to do, an underhand floater push shot, whatever the fuck that was, is definitely not the move. But again, maybe that's he's feeling his ankle and he's worried. Like, I get that. I'm not going to kill him too much for that. To me, this was just like, I honestly kind of struggled to say any particular player played well yesterday. Like maybe, I guess Mitch.
I thought Brunson was good.
I thought Brunson was
to play well. I think he needs to shoot more, but yeah.
I mean, look, he took 21 shots. I'm not sure about that, but
38 minutes in a game when no one else had it going, and I would have liked to see what he was doing against Milwaukee or Miami, take over on a night when no one else had it. But that's
I mean, if he's going to do that, that's fine. I still feel like his balance right now between scoring and playmaking has not been great. I feel like, yes, he's scoring really well. I do think his scoring right now, especially in these games that RJ Barrett, what we're seeing, it does feel like his scoring is coming at the expense of, I don't know, better team offensive play. Now, you can tell me that, to your point, yesterday nobody else had it going, so he should look to take over.
I had the opposite criticism of him, so that's interesting. I do think overall you're right. Over the course of the season, I think last night was a game for him to realize we're playing against a tough team. I have to be the guy.
Yeah, maybe. I just don't like how this offense has looked in the games without RJ Barrett, which is a very big credit to RJ Barrett and how well he's played this year, because I just feel like without him, that bench has lost. Whenever in the games he hasn't played, I just think the bench struggles to find a good flow. And I feel a lot of that is because Brunson and Randall, especially Randall, take their opportunities with the bench to kind of all right, it's my time to cook. And yesterday, Brunson, I don't know what, it was just weird yesterday. You're right to the point where I don't even think it was that. It was just he didn't really get anything going for us in those minutes. It was very odd to watch. But Randall yesterday, I thought his minutes on the bench were atrocious. And forget atrocious. They were just you compare them to how you see the bench play when they've been playing this year. RJ is the guy, and there is no flow. There is none of the kind of multiple passing sequences, movement, guys cutting. There's none of that going on, because once he came in, once he was with that group, it was kind of he's the center of the solar system, and we're just going to force feed him the ball, and that's that. And is that on Quickly? Is that on Thibs? Is that on Julius? I don't know where to point the finger there. I just know what I saw on the floor and what I've seen on the floor consistently when Randall is on with those groups. And I am pretty much over it. I don't like how he plays with that group. I don't like how they play together. I don't think that he helps that group get going. Like Brunson with the bench this year hasn't been great, but a lot of that I think just stems from like some maybe unlucky shot making. It just feels like they're not making shots and they have the opportunity.
And he's shooting 37% from 3 to 10 feet. He's a career. We know that's his bread and butter. He's also shooting 37% from 10 to 16 feet. So the mid-range stuff is going to bounce back for Brunson.
And I don't get this. I don't get the sense that he's dominating the ball the same way, or like taking away from that kind of group's collective style of play the same way that the Randall did. The other part that I think the Knicks really struggled with yesterday, which is stupid, and it's honestly this is something they struggled with way too much for an NBA team, is when teams show pressure in the backcourt, they like struggled so much yesterday to bring the ball up the floor, and I don't understand why. Like they're conceding a numbers advantage to you. This should not be hard. The one time they broke it effectively, quickly brought the ball up. They were kind of like soft trapping him, and he brought it up slowly, and then he was able to bounce the ball ahead. He split the trap basically with the pass to Hartenstein. Hartenstein fed it to Julius, and then Julius did something that was very Julius-y, that was not productive. But like they had the trap beat and they had a numbers advantage. They just didn't capitalize on it. But like I don't know what was up with that yesterday. It was weird too. There was one early in the first half where they brought pressure when Quickly was in. He was bringing the ball up, and Julius is like, it was because the Holiday was on Julius, so Julius was in the backcourt, but he's like sauntering basically on the sideline, kind of close to Quickly. So Holiday was able to kind of show pressure without conceding an easy pass to Julius, and they were barely
Randall.
Yeah, and they were barely able to get the ball across the halfway line. But it was just like I don't know. I'm sorry. Like I just think that Julius played a really lazy game at times yesterday. And I get the whole ankle thing, but like I just think a lot of this is bad decision making, and a lot of it is just stuff that we've seen from him in the past when he's not playing well. And so like I don't know, maybe my standards for him are too high, but he is a 2-time All-NBA player, and he is a guy that has been the central focus of this team's kind of like roster planning, construction, season goals, whatever you want to call them, however you want to phrase it. And right now he's not living up to his end of the bargain. Now, is that just because of the ankle? Hopefully. I mean, in the sense like hopefully that's all it is. And 2 weeks from now he's going to be looking exactly like he did last year. But like even within that, even if he's playing better and he's hitting a higher level offensively, making more shots, whatever, shooting better percentages, I'm at the point where I'm like, all these dumb decisions you make are, they are exactly the problem, and they're exactly what holds you back. Like he had that play yesterday. How many times have we seen this exact play from Julius? Bad shot towards the end of the first half, stands there holding his fucking pose like he's in Love and Basketball, and Pritchard just leaks out, gets a uncontested layup. Julius makes zero effort to get back. Like, how many times that is at some point, like, yeah, you can be like, well, Thibs has to hold him accountable, or, fucking Julius just has to be. At some point, it's like, this is what he is, and this is what you're going to get from him. And that's that. And it has nothing to do with the ankle. It has nothing to do with he's learning, or he's a 10th year player, and this is what he is. And so, like, I get frustrated, really frustrated watching it in game. But after the fact, like now when we're talking about it, I'm not frustrated. I'm just like, that's what he is. This is what he is as a player. We can argue about it. We can get upset about it. We can, whatever we want to do. It doesn't really matter, because at this point in his career, I think it's kind of crazy to think these things are going to change with him. He's not going to start seeing the floor better. That pass he missed it quickly. He misses that pass all the time when he's under any modicum of pressure, because he will always try to step back through the pressure and then try to jump past to somebody or put up some shot or whatever. He will never just accept the pressure and then see the pass to somebody right in front of him and trust them to make the play. No, he always has to try to split the pressure and then try to make a crazy play, or an awesome play, I should say. Not necessarily crazy, but an awesome play, a home run hitting play himself. That's what he is. This is what he is as a player. These things are not going to change. And to expect them to change at this point in his career is honestly just a waste of time and it's a waste of energy. It's not going to happen. There's nothing we've seen. We've had him here for 5 years. In 5 years, aside from randomly morphing into like a much superior creator on the ball, separate from decision making, but his actual ability to create offense, what has he improved on in terms of his decision making and processing? Really nothing. Like as far like I'm not even saying this is like an insult because he's still a really good player and he still helps you win a lot of ball games. But like this higher level that people are expecting from him, or this, he's going to show in the playoffs, like it's not going to happen. Like it's just not. I don't know what else to say other than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quickly, the one I was referring to, what was
I know exactly what you're referring to. It was ridiculous.
But it was also continuation off of quick. Like I think Randall gave quickly the ball, and then quickly drove, but then he created a micro advantage. But then the thing is this, right? Randall needs to be aware that, okay, he gave me the ball back, but that doesn't mean now it's my turn to just cook. He's going to do something else, right? And it's very glaring compared to RJ, because that's what I think one of RJ's improved everywhere, right? Better shooting. We saw that dunk against Charlotte. The athleticism looks to be better than it ever has been during his career, right? Defensive engagement, you name it, RJ has improved there. Short and mid-range is just a revelation compared to where he was a couple of years ago. But I think he's also showed a lot of what's really making that bench unit work is the self-awareness. He's starting to incorporate some of those pull-up jumpers and stuff. He hit a couple of movement shots that are just, I mean, that's a game changer for him. But playing with quickly, why it works is he has that self-awareness where I think he's realized this year, especially compared to last year, it's like Thibs is going to put me in to babysit the bench. But that doesn't mean because he still has some limitations as a creator on the ball, right? The pull-up game is not still like an elite thing, though it's nice to see him starting to take those. He doesn't have kind of the explosiveness where he doesn't have the explosiveness is really good. He doesn't have the ball handling and all of that to really create in a way that to really like just break down guys one-on-one. But what he's great at is when he gets a step on a guy, he gets the rim. And he knows that quickly can get him that step, right? And he knows that quickly is probably not a guy you want to just like. He's not the best necessarily at just getting by a guy and blowing by, but he can create these micro advantages. So when RJ passes the ball to Quickly and Quickly doesn't get all the way to the rim, but he adds something else, RJ isn't just like, okay, he had his shot, now it's my turn. He's going to turn that into something else, which may turn into a pass to someone else. He's aware that Quickly's probably going to relocate himself. It's not just Quickly, right? It's with Hartenstein. It's that whole group. Like we complain about the pump fakes, but it's always to lead to something else. It's always to keep. It's like the yes and that you see. Like again, the second time in 2 weeks, I'm referencing improv. They all do that, and I think that's why Brunson, to my view yesterday, was a little bit more, I thought, passive. He's all, but like they're all doing that. In Randall, it's just, I don't even want to say it's record scratching. It's not even about seeing the floor. It's just like understanding this is what we're trying to do. And understanding that in this offense, like, yeah, there's going to be times when you're going to hit the ball with 10 seconds left, or you're going to have a mismatch in the paint, and we want you to ISO. But it just, and I'll say this too, before the year, I really wanted him to play with the bench. I wanted, because if you got shooters now, Quickly, DiVincenzo, if they played Grimes with that, I was like, that's Randall next to three really high gravity shooters who push the ball and defend. I love that. And it's going to take a different attitude from him. And to your point, yeah, I don't know that it's reasonable to expect, as the ankle gets better, you're going to see him probably be more explosive. You're going to see the finishing get back to he's been finishing at an atrocious level. I have to think that the ankle is playing some part in that. But in terms of this, what they're trying to build on offense, what everyone on the team has talked about building, and you see it in his interviews. And again, he's an easy target. I get it. There's probably people who are going to disagree with this, but the interviews, Thibs has talked about trusting the pass. Brunson, when he's caught legitimate criticism for being too ball dominant, has taken it to heart, I think. No pun intended. These guys everyone has talked about how they're trying to play it faster, move the ball. And then Randall, you can tell me it's taking a quote out of context. He's blaming the spacing, right? He's blaming, and people have taken it to, I don't think he's blaming Mitch, but I do think I've seen people on Twitter saying, well, we need a stretch five. Mitch isn't the guy. He's the problem with the spacing. It's like, no, he had an off night rebounding the ball yesterday, which resulted in 3 offensive rebounds. Oh my God. So it's really it's one thing when he was just having bad performances. You could put that to Thibs, but I don't even think Thibs wants this identity anymore. I think he is trying to evolve this team, and I think they're buying in. And maybe Julius is buying in. It's just it's not working right now. So I guess the question is, do you think is your position that they're going to have to move him? Because on a surface level, 5-5 against this schedule, you're where the Knicks probably thought they were going to be. Even if I thought they were going to get 50 wins, and there's nothing that's moved me off of that. But on that level where everyone's buying into this idea and this new philosophy, they're getting guys like DiVincenzo and Hartenstein and Hart who are ball movers. Do you think that is your position that they're going to have to move him at some point?
I mean, that's been my position.
But I think your position has been that they have to. That'll happen next summer. Do you think that gets accelerated?
No, I don't. I don't know what. I mean, maybe it could. I could be wrong. I don't know. You tell me. But I don't see a move out there that they're going to make that's going to make sense.
Well, Chicago might blow it up, right? So.
Yeah, but what the hell? What is Julius? How is that helping? What are you going to get from Chicago that trading Julius matters?
Well, Julius and if you can Julius and picks for like Levine and Pat Williams.
Why am I trading picks for Levine and Pat fucking Williams? You kidding me? Might as well be taking a shit on the floor every time he goes on the court.
Well, I mean, if we need to get rid of Julius, you don't like Levine anymore?
I don't. If RJ Barrett's playing like this, I don't really understand what I'm doing with Zach LaVine. How does that help my team? How does it balance this roster at all?
Well, more spacing. I do think he's a better kind of conduit for the ball movement and everything that Julius.
I don't know about that. I think Zach LaVine's a pretty awful decision maker. I mean, he's not playing well this year, or he's not shooting well this year, I should say. I don't know how he's playing. I haven't watched that much, but he's just. I think the idea of Zach LaVine is always going to be much better than what Zach LaVine is. Quite frankly, I think Julius is a better player. I've always thought Julius is a better player. I thought Julius was a better player even before he made all-star teams than Zach LaVine. So I just don't really – that does nothing for me. As far as moving the ball, the Bulls actually have a lower assist rate than the Knicks. Take that for what it's worth. I'm not saying that means that's all because of Zach LaVine, but I'm not exactly sure if you're a primary high-usage guy on a team and they play a certain way, it probably says something about you as a player. Maybe this is like a Mark Jackson situation and Zach LaVine's going to go to a team that wants to zip the ball around and all of a sudden he's he's flying around the floor and doing Klay Thompson stuff or something, but I don't know. I don't really see it with him. Yeah, I don't think they're going to make a move in season with Julius. It just seems like such a massive it would require such a massive philosophical shift in terms of play style and stuff that I just don't see that happening.
But it's a shift that I think they're trying to make already.
I think it's nothing about what they've done as an organization indicates to me a team that likes to make big changes in season, necessarily even make big changes. I don't think that I think they do. They would be fine making a big change, but I'm not sure they want to do it in season. And I don't think they want to do it for a guy like Zach LaVine. Especially if he comes back and now he struggles for the next 2 months or something, which I don't think will happen because it seems like he's playing he's operating in a better place mentally. But let's just say that happened. Then sure, I could see them being like, you know what, we can't waste the season. Like Zach LaVine, he brings us better consistent 3-point shooting, whatever it is, whatever their logic is for why. I could see them doing that because that's not changing your whole philosophy and style of play and your lineups and how everything operates. Trading Randall for LaVine would be drastic. You'd now be left with no natural power forward in the roster. Even if you want to say, we'd get Patrick Williams back. Okay, fine. You're left with Patrick Williams, your one maybe natural four in the roster. I think, you're talking about a team that has basically established its identity as we're super physical. We're going to win the possession battle. We are going to beat you up inside. We're going to own the glass. We don't turn the ball over, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying you can't shift that philosophy or that they're unwilling to, but I think that's a very, very difficult thing to do in season, and especially difficult to do if you're doing it for Zach LaVine, who isn't some juggernaut fucking force of a player. So I would be
So I'll give you
very
that, but do you buy though what Tibbs is saying in terms of moving the ball and how even Brunson? I think these guys are trying to change how they play. Do you? I mean, I think the guys they acquired a guy from the Warriors who is that kind of a player. The last move, Hart, is more of a connective piece when used properly. Hartenstein before that was the last acquisition. He's also kind of a I don't think they signed Hartenstein with the idea that he was just going to be do exactly what Mitch did, right? And he doesn't. Like you saw, one of the press breaks they had was a great pass to him down court. He had that gorgeous pocket pass to Julius that I didn't think there was any window. I mean, don't you think that kind of organizationally, and even Thibs, they're trying to shift? They're still going to emphasize the things you talked about, but more ball movement, more pace. I mean, don't you think that's kind of they want to head in that direction?
I mean, they're saying they do, but
They're acquiring guys, and a lot of the guys are playing that way too. And Tibbs he's giving them minutes. Say what you want about Quickly. Quickly's been getting good minutes for the most part.
I mean, I don't want to get into that right now. But I mean, the Knicks are second to last in the league, or they're last now in the league in pace. They're 96.1. Like, whatever you want to say about how they want to play, they're not doing it. And this is like the third straight year we're hearing about, oh, we want to be fast, we want to play fast, we want to play fast, and they haven't done it. Like, I don't. And sure, to some degree, do I think that's like partly down to personnel? Yeah, I absolutely do. I do think this is like partly a Julius issue.
Point.
Yeah, I think it's very seriously very influenced by Julius, but I don't think he's alone. I don't think you can play a high tempo with Mitch as your center, because and very specifically, if you're going to play, Mitch played what? I think he played 30 minutes last night. He's got to be playing the most minutes of his career right now. So like all of that considered, I would guess that that's partially a factor as well. But like, yeah, I mean, I do think that Julius is a big reasoning for that. And, is there a 4 you can get that changes that? I don't know. I don't know who that is. You like, I can always sit here and say Tobias Harris, but like, is Tobias Harris even available? Why would he be? Philly's playing really well. I think he fits really well with Joel Embiid. He's kind of like a natural spacer. And I just don't know why they would even do that. Like, why would they trade Julius for, like, I'm both teams. Like, I don't know why the Knicks would trade Julius for Tobias, and I'm not sure, because I feel like they'd be like, well, we're trading a two-time All-NBA player. How can we trade him just for Tobias Harris? And I feel like Philly would be like, we don't need Julius. We need, like, that's not what we need on this team. We're good right now. So I don't know. I don't. Do they want to play faster? Sure. Are they doing it? No. And that ultimately just, like, whatever the reasoning is for it, if that is your goal, Thibs has not hit that goal now for 3 years. So that's on him as a coach, and maybe that's on the front office too for not getting making the personnel changes required.
Well, I mean, they have slowly been turning this. That's kind of the guys they're acquiring they have been turning it over. So that's both a mitigating factor for Thibs, is that process hasn't happened overnight, and the like two-way players who can play his style of defense and play that way on offense. So that's taken time to bring those guys in. And yeah, I think that's a good point about Mitch. You probably do want to slow things down a little bit if you have such a great defender, and even in the half court, right? The kind of, you forget about pace, right? Just kind of the more ball movement heavy stuff, and not just relying on drawing doubles to create just a one pass shot. I think that it takes time to make that happen, but I think that is what Thibs wants too, not just like post up and kick to an open man for just because we kill the pump fake guys, but I think that the pump fake is as a result of like build up the possession, not just one pass shot. And by the way, I think Grimes, that's on him, but I think something clicked in the third quarter. I really wish they had gotten him back out there in the fourth earlier. But you like to see him just take 3 in a row like that, no hesitation, and they need more of that. But I guess what I'm saying is I think that everyone is buying in more towards drive and kick, and then keep moving, don't just stand and watch, don't just say that one person needs to beat their man and draw something and then it's a shot. I think they're trying to do more of those things, even if the offense isn't particularly complex. And I just see one player not doing that. And maybe that's unfair. It's overly harsh. but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just at that point, like, I mean, what? There's nothing to say. Like that's what he has, so he has to deal with it. I will like yesterday. There's also things you can do to speed up pace that have nothing to do with Julius. Like when like they're pressuring you to bring the ball. I mean, and honestly, the Knicks yesterday, right? The pace of this game yesterday. Just guess what it was.
90 possessions or something. 92.
84.2. This was like this is like a 9. Like this is like
that's not just the Knicks. Like the Celtics get back in transition. Yeah.
But my point is, they weren't just getting back in transition, right? They were like the Knicks started off the game playing fast. Boston started pressuring them, bringing the ball to the floor, and there was no adjustment. And the Knicks do this a lot, where they just you see this all the time, where if teams show pressure in the backcourt, that guy has to take like almost a full 5 seconds to get open to make the inbounds pass. They don't make it easy on these guys. And you see this with inbounds plays too, right? Where it's like there's no screening and guys are just kind of standing around with their hand up. They've got to do a better job. And I think things like that are where Thibs can do a better job in terms of like, hey, if you want us to play faster, it's not just about telling guys to push the ball up the floor. There's a lot more to it than that. Also, the frustrating thing about this game yesterday, the Knicks won in 3 of the 4 factors. They had a lower turnover percentage. They had a better offensive rebound percentage. They got to the free throw line more. Boston just shot the shit out of the ball. They had a 62.7 EFG. The Knicks didn't even shoot that badly. They were 51.3 EFG as a team.
Well, they shot the ball really well from 3. They were 43% from 3. So
yeah, so like the Knicks didn't completely piss themselves offensively yesterday, but the 2-point shooting against Boston remains really problematic. They went 18 of 44 yesterday against them. So you need to do better inside the arc. Yeah, some of that is definitely. I mean, you could put like I don't know, probably like you think like 4 or 5 of those. You're like, quickly probably makes those most of the time. So that's part of it. Randall, he didn't have a great game inside the arc. Really, nobody had a great game inside the arc, right? So it's really no single out anybody.
Was really good too, so you got to give him credit.
Yeah, and I don't think the Knicks are doing a good job of like putting. This is the second game they've played Boston. They've had the same issue. They shot the ball well from 3, but they're not doing well inside the arc. And I do think that they're still doing this like they're forcing too much inside the arc against this team. You've got to trust the 3. There are times they had open shots. They pass it up to drive in. And obviously, Josh Hart is the king of this, but it's not just Josh Hart. You see this from like Grimes did it yesterday. He had an open corner 3, pump faked, and then put the ball on the floor. And then he swung it out to Josh Hart for top of the key 3. And it's like, why is that a play? You have an open corner 3. That's a much better shot than Josh Hart.
It's probably the best shot the Knicks can get on any individual possession.
Yeah, it's like that or a Mitch lob. It's like that or a Mitch lob. And it was just a stupid decision. I thought Quickly hesitated because, once he got to a cold start, he started hesitating from 3, which is kind of annoying because he took 2 threes. He made 1. The last 3 he made. So he has to do better. It's just they've got to trust the 3 more, and it's got to be consistent. Like, I know it sounds stupid because they did take 35 threes, so it's not like they took no threes. But that's what was working for you yesterday. Take more. Brunson, take more threes. Brunson took he took
Smoke
only
more
7.
weed, Turtle, please.
Yeah, but he only took 7 threes yesterday. He needs to take more than that. It's bad. And again, like I think some of this goes back to Thibs. Like you can't. Josh Hart playing 42 minutes last night is a joke. I'm sorry. Like and in the games that RJ Barrett has not played, okay, so last night Josh Hart 43 minutes 7 seconds. Okay, I want to go to the other 2 games where RJ Barrett didn't play, right? So that was the Bucks game and that was the second Cleveland game. Against the Bucks, Josh Hart 35 minutes 59 seconds, Quentin Grimes 33 minutes 34 seconds, Emmanuel Quickly 21 minutes 49 seconds. That was an egregious one because Quickly was one of the few guys on the team that actually had any offense going. And then against Cleveland, the game before, Josh Hart, 29 minutes, 17 seconds. Quentin Grimes, 21 minutes, 30 seconds. Emmanuel Quickly, 27 minutes, 43 seconds. He doesn't need to play. He shouldn't be playing. Like, when RJ Barrett's not playing, there's absolutely no reason for the adjustment to be Josh Hart plays more than Quickly, plays more than Grimes. And more ridiculous than that is that when RJ Barrett's not playing, you're not seeing any real uptick in minutes for Quickly or Grimes. Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Those guys should be playing more if RJ's not playing. And very specifically, like, I understand he wants to match up size. You were not getting killed on the glass last night. That's not really like Boston's thing. You could have played very, like, do I understand why he wants to have a second creator on the floor at all times? Yes, I do. And I actually appreciate that. I also think he is almost making this happen at the expense of Quentin Grimes because he refuses to cut down Josh Hart's minutes in any capacity ever. And I really think that, like, Grimes would benefit a lot from playing with that bench group, and he's barely getting a chance to at all. He's almost only exclusively playing with the starters at the beginning of each half and at the end of each half. And I think that's, I'm not saying that's the reason he's not, struggling or he's not finding a rhythm, or he's not consistent. I don't know. That's not the reason. And quite honestly, he has to shoulder a lot of that responsibility too, because there are opportunities for him that he does not pull the trigger on. He's too happy to move the ball. He's too happy to, this is slightly contested. I'm going to dribble it back out, pick up my dribble, and now wait 3 seconds for somebody to come save me and get the ball for me. Like, he's got to be more aggressive and he's got to be more decisive with that too. But I do think part of this, like, he would benefit from playing with that bench group more. And I think the bench group might benefit from having him on there a little bit more too. So, like, I don't know how you're going to do that. Maybe you bring in DiVincenzo quicker, whatever it is. They've got to find more minutes for him, and they've got to find a way to get him more involved in the game. But, like, to go back to the Josh Hart thing, 43 minutes for him last night is crazy. Like, I'm sorry. I know that I know he went 6 of 12, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. Like, I thought he played a pretty solid game. But if the argument for playing him so much is we needed him out there because of Boston's wings and we wanted to match up and blah, blah, blah. By the way, I got to say this other thing, though, too. People are talking about, like, Boston's size and all their wings. They're not that big of a team. They're not. They have Porzingis, they have Tatum, they have Brown. If you want to count Sam Hauser as, like, some big wing guy, like, cool, but I'm not going to. They're not some, like, gigantic team. They're like, oh, my God, how are we ever going to match up with them? They're just not. They have 3 guys. Honestly, they have 2 guys that are plus, like, plus size for their position, right? Tatum, if you play him at the 3, and Porzingis basically anywhere because he's 7'3". But, like,
I do think Hart was a little bit better on Tatum yesterday. I think Grimes was giving him a little bit more space than you'd like, but yeah, that doesn't.
Yeah, Hart was better on Tatum, but Tatum was cooking everybody. Okay, he made shots on everybody. He was on one yesterday. I'm not even blaming Hart, but if the argument was we needed a Hart out there for defense, you weren't getting it. You weren't getting it, and if you want to play Hart 43 minutes, so be it. But, like, you can play, like, this would have been a great matchup to be like, hey, if they're going to switch everything, why don't we just switch everything and see what happens here? Look, we can switch everything too, and let's see what happens. Like, I just think if let's play small with Julius at the 5, like, whatever it is you're going to do, I think you had opportunities to try stuff, and you had opportunities to, play Hart at the 4 more than happened yesterday, because it quite frankly didn't. How many minutes did Julius play yesterday? He played something like
38, I think.
Yeah, he played 37 minutes, 43 seconds. Like, so there's very few minutes there where Josh Hart is playing the 4, right? You're talking about like 10 minutes. I get it. I know this is probably like super critical of Thibs to a too much of a degree. I don't believe we lost the game because of Thibs yesterday. But I do think this Josh Hart stuff is getting ridiculous. And I think it's getting crazy to me when it's coming at the expense of guys who, like, Quentin Grimes can't play a better third quarter than he did offensively, aside from that one decision. He made one bad decision, and after that, guess what? He had 3 opportunities to take threes. He pulled the trigger each time without hesitation, and he drained a 3 each time. Like, he also had one earlier in the quarter, rim in and out. His shot looked good yesterday. He made 3 threes in the quarter, and then he doesn't come back in until there's like 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter when he comes back out. And I'm sorry, I know Quickly was 1 of 10 from the field yesterday, and I know that, Josh Hart 6 of 12. You can never convince me that Josh Hart is creating or being a threat off the bounce in the same way that a guy like Quickly can be. And he's definitely not a threat from behind the arc in the way that a guy like Quickly or or Grimes will ever be. Leave aside the percentages and whatever. Like he's just not going to be. So I just get really frustrated with that at a certain point because it just feels like there's such an overvaluation of like his size, his competitiveness, his physicality, his rebounding at the
Miles
expense
and
of
miles of heart. Gotta have
but
miles and miles of heart.
at the expense of everything else. And I just, to me, like for him to have played the most minutes on the team yesterday is a bit much. I mean, he played basically 4 more minutes than Brunson, 5 more than Randall, 10 more than Mitch. Like he played 15 more minutes than Quentin Grimes. He played 18 more minutes than Quickly. Like, I'm sorry, this is crazy. And now for the season, okay, this is just for the season.
And it's happened when
Right?
Quickly's had good games too. It's worth noting, right? It's
Yeah.
one thing to say he was 1 for 10 yesterday, but Quickly's played well and still only gotten 25 minutes.
For the season now,
42 or whatever with RJ.
For the season now, Josh Hart, 28.5 minutes per game. Emmanuel Quickly, 24.4. Quentin Grimes, 24.3. Like, I don't know. He is currently Josh Hart, 47.3 true shooting. Quickly, 58.1. Quentin Grimes, 60.5. If you want to go by on-court rating, okay, this is just what they are on the floor. Quentin Grimes, plus 4.5. Emmanuel Quickly, plus 2.9. Josh Hart, plus 0.2. He's actually got the lowest on-court rating among the team's rotation players right now. So
everyone's positive?
Everyone's positive.
Wow.
So he's not – this is just on-court. On-off, he's also the worst among their rotation players. He's minus 8.8. But, like, this is now not just about his shooting or whatever. Like, his impact right now isn't there. And I do think he's working his way back. I do think physically he's looking better. But when you play this many minutes,
and he does have to play the 4, right? He has to play the backup 4 odd. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's what's affecting him. I actually think that benefits him. But yes, he does do that. But like this is just ridiculous. There's nothing telling you that he needs to be playing more minutes than these guys, other than some weird thing of like we need to have his size and physicality and rebounding out there at all times. It's just like, it's kind of look. This is, I guess, maybe this is a credit to Thibs, but it's like it's pretty wild that we've evolved to a place with Thibs where now I'm not worried about him sticking to his like pre-designed rotations and lineups. I'm now worried about when we're missing somebody, how he'll adjust, because his adjustment now just seems to be play Josh Hart more. And I think that's not right. And I also think it's costing guys like Quickly and Grimes opportunities that they deserve, maybe more than Hart. And obviously there's situations where I get why, like I'll criticize Thibs for playing Hart as many minutes as he did yesterday, but I kind of understand it, given the matchup and RJ being out. Fine, I get that one. But like, that Milwaukee game was ridiculous. It made no sense in real time. It made no sense in real time. And there's been other games too. It's just you can't do this. You cannot be so reliant on a guy who is neither scoring efficiently or having the overall impact that you want from him or that you'd expect from him. So like, I don't know. I think the Josh Hart thing is something to monitor, and I do think it's becoming a bit of a problem. And I will say, like, if the pivot when RJ is out if this is what Thibs thinks is the right thing to do, then maybe you do need to go find another rotation guy that is a little bit bigger on the wing that you can plug in, or maybe it doesn't need to be somebody bigger. Like I will say, I think Alex Caruso is out there. He might be gettable. I think if Alex Caruso is out there and he's gettable, he's somebody I would definitely look into, even though he is undersized. I think he is somebody that plays well above his size. He plays, he plays bigger than his position.
I think guard Julius.
We've seen him guard Julius. He guarded Kevin Durant really well last week. Like he's capable of playing up and defending up and all these things. I would definitely be interested.
I mean, that's probably going to squeeze Quickly and Grimes' minutes even more. But but to your point, if that's just what it is, then yeah.
No, it's not. I mean, to me, it's more about like if Quickly and Grimes' minutes aren't going to move regardless of whether RJ is healthy or not healthy, then to me, all you're talking about is Josh Hart's minutes. And Josh Hart would benefit from playing less minutes because Josh Hart, 28, 29 minutes in a game, 30, like that's probably great.
He's also
like,
no spring. He's no spring chicken, and he's had injury issues too.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning.
This is like that is his sweet spot. That's his upper range of like when he's a good player. When you extend him to the way Thibs is extending him, like I don't know. Like I saw a lot of people like Josh Hart didn't play well yesterday. I thought Josh Hart played fine. I thought he played pretty well. But you play him 43 minutes, you're going to expose his limitations. And that falls on Thibs. You know, Thibs is ultimately putting him in a position in situations like that to fail. And when he does stuff like take Quickly out, who's cooking against Milwaukee, to bring Josh Hart in because I don't know why.
Or Grimes out yesterday when he was on a heater and finally shooting, right?
Yeah, when you do these things, you're forcing unfair comparisons onto Josh Hart. And that's not fair to him. And I just think that like Thibs is allowing his affection for the player and appreciation for what he brings to the table to really take away from what he provides and what his optimal role is.
Yeah, and I mean, so someone tweeted this. I'm looking at it on PvP stats. So I think the second most used lineup the Knicks have gone to has been Hart in place of RJ, essentially. Part of that is obviously because RJ's been out. That lineup in 80 minutes has a net rating of negative 12.06. There is now you can say they've had opponents have shot 44% from three against that unit. So there's mitigating factors, but the offensive rating tanks to 101. Those four guys with Hart out have played 129 minutes plus 13, right? So it's and a big part of that we should go without saying is the guy taking those Hart minutes has been arguably the Knicks' best player in RJ Barrett. He's been phenomenal. So I'm not going to claim that that's all on Hart, but I just don't think he mixes well. I mean, again, I think Hart gives a lot of very interesting things to
Hart does not play well with Julius Randle.
That's what I was going to say. This year, the two actually, it's a little better than a whole lineup, but this year, the two of them together have a net rating of minus 4.16 in 156 minutes. If we go back to last year, the two had probably a better rating than this, but if we go back to last year, the two of them, when they were both on the court, two of them last year actually had a really good net rating together, 11.88. This year, though, it's not working. I think that what I was talking about before is where Randall wants to make the one pass and you just shoot. Hart is not a good guy for that because Hart is kind of like, one, he's not a great shooter, and two, he wants to leverage what little gravity he has to go in and make a play for someone else. But then it goes back to Julius and it gets record scratched again. So I agree with you. I don't think they play particularly well together. I also just don't think like Hart is the kind of guy who I don't think he's this lockdown on ball stopper. I actually think he did a good job on Tatum yesterday. He's done a good job on guys like Jamal Murray in the past. I'm not impugning his on ball defense. What he's really good at, though, like Quickly, like DiVincenzo, is off ball and that free safety role, anticipating what the offense is going to do and disrupting it. And he doesn't get to do that with the starting lineup either. When he comes in he's usually just tasked with being an on-ball stopper. And I think that's part of the problem. The reason why that happens is because he's playing with Brunson, who you have to move Brunson off ball. So he doesn't get to play to his strengths as much. His defensive rebounding probably moves the impact needle less when he's playing next to Randall and Mitch. And so I think that the 42 minutes, I agree. The thought of like Caruso on this team playing with some of those bench guys on defense is definitely very enticing. Whether or not fix the minutes later, but that would just be a great value signing. I would be surprised if Chicago would really trade somebody like that for cheap. The rebuilding is one thing, and if they want to tear it down and trade guys like Levine and DeRozan, but Caruso just has so much value to any contender that I think that they would probably demand more. But Hart is he's a guy you probably don't want playing more than 30 minutes. He's a guy who probably exacerbates some of the limitations of Julius, he exacerbates some of the spacing issues on the front court, and that's also why has RJ fit so well with that group. He's also played well with Julius. RJ's not only is he shooting the ball better, he's shooting more from three than he ever has. He's shooting 9.2 attempts per 100 possessions from three. Okay, that is the level of a guy like Grimes. That is a high volume shooter. It's not like the kind of guys, the 12, 13 3-point attempt guys, those are like Fournier. So it's not that, but so RJ is willing, even more than a guy like Grimes, it seems like this year, to just pull the trigger. And he's doing it off movement. He's doing it in a variety of ways. And Hart just doesn't. And so RJ is a much better fit with that lineup. But when he's not doing that, that's the thing. When you lose that guy, substituting with him a guy who doesn't do that, as opposed to a guy like Quickly or DiVincenzo, guys who are willing and ready to pull the trigger, it's going to hurt you, and it's going to exacerbate the issues that I think existed last year in the playoffs that RJ has been covering up pretty well by just being much more self-aware and like getting it. And I don't think it's not that Hart doesn't get it. I think he shoots more than he wants to because he realizes that kind of has to be his role, but it's not a good use of his skills.
Yeah, it's just too much. He's playing too much. He's playing way too predominant of a role, and it's taking away from other guys too, which is probably the most frustrating part of it. I will say last night, I know there were people that were like, oh, like was the Knicks' size the issue yesterday? What is that about? Like, how was yesterday about the Knicks' size? What happened in this game yesterday? You're like, oh, well, if the Knicks were bigger, this wouldn't have happened. Like, Jason, the one thing you could say is, oh, well, Jason Tatum went off. Yeah, but like Jason Tatum shoots over a lot of guys, man. Like, I've seen Jason Tatum. Yes, I've seen RJ Barrett have a lot of successes against Jason Tatum defensively. I've also seen Jason Tatum have really good games against RJ Barrett offensively. Is there a chance?
To be clear, to that extent, I would have if RJ was healthy, that's the guy I would have wanted on Tatum for sure. Like no,
and he probably would have been. He at least would have been on him a decent amount of time, right? So like, maybe it would have made a difference. I don't know. All I'm saying is like, I don't know how your takeaway from this game is Jason Tatum went off on it. And like, let's be real. I don't. The shots he made over Josh Hart, yeah, he was cooking yesterday. On another night, even with Josh Hart giving up the size, like the shots he was taking and making, he's not making all those. He made so many tough turnaround baseline fades and step backs and all these shots that are like, yes, he can make those shots, but he can make those shots over anybody. This is not like, oh, he made them specifically over Josh Hart because he's smaller than him. Like, he can make those shots over anybody, over bigger guys, whatever. Like, he's that good. And he also has different ways to attack different players, like times where Randall was switched on to him, he was able to cook him. Like, he's a talented offensive player who has multiple options at his disposal to score. So pretending like this is just about size or whatever, I don't really get that at all.
Yeah, I mean, calling we're the top rebounding team on both ends in the league, calling the Knicks problem size is a little bit. I can say, I mean, it's a product I think people have been begging for a long time, including us, right? For the Knicks to draft the 6'8", 6'9" type wing. Even a guy like Jalen Williams, because of the crazy length, I know that's part of what had you really interested in him. But functionally, I don't think. I mean, they're one of the top defenses in the league. I think pointing to anything on defense really as the reason why this Knicks team is short is to put it. But hey, maybe if we had Cam Reddish, he would have locked up Tatum yesterday. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. So I don't know. I just yesterday
defense is not the issue with this team, and it hasn't been since the playoffs.
No, they were yesterday. Like they just, I think even if you want to say the defense was the issue yesterday, which I think is like a fair thing to throw out there, it is not to the point where it is. It's just I don't know. I don't really get the. I don't know how you take away from that game is the defense was super problematic in a way that's related to size. Like, if anything, you could throw out how they defended the pick and roll, how they defended Kristaps, they're dropping instead of I get all that. That's fair. I think that's fair game. And if you want to criticize Thibs for that, I think totally fair game. But was it the size that was their issue? I don't think so. I don't really see that at all. You're muted, Stacy.
Yeah, I think I just my internet flashed out for a second.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I think was the size. I think the thing you could. I completely agree. I think the two things are one. In terms of it would be nice if we had a secondary rim protector, a guy like a Jaren Jackson or someone at the four who would allow Mitch to play a little bit more aggressively on the perimeter because I think the mobility is there to do it. Actually, I don't think it's not a position where we were in like 2 seasons ago where this is a guy who isn't comfortable on the perimeter. I think Thibs is even he switched on to Kawhi, right, and really moved his feet well. I don't think he's incapable of guarding KP by any means. But you don't have any rim protection. So if you had a guy like Jaden McDaniels or Jaren Jackson Jr., right, that would be interesting. But I think the other thing, and let me throw this back to you. Do you think there's? I mean, it seemed like Brunson actually forced a couple of misses from KP, right? Do you think putting a guy maybe like Josh Hart on KP, right, and cross matching, and maybe putting Randall or someone on Drew, right, or hiding maybe Mitch on a less threatening player and allowing him to roam? Maybe if they have Pritchard in the game, you have Mitch nominally guarding Pritchard, but really helping pretty aggressively off him. Do you think those are some options that the Knicks maybe can look at because KP's not? I mean, KP's not going away from this team, and the Knicks very well might have to play this team in a 7-game series.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Do you think they could do something like put a smaller guy like Hart or Grimes on KP, and then maybe put Mitch nominally on a guy like Pritchard or one of the less threatening defenders, and cross match that way so that they can take away KP's shooting ability? Because it's not like he's a force on the offensive glass, and as we've seen going back to his Knicks days, a guy who can take his legs out can cause him some problems.
I think I don't know if that's what they should do because I don't know if I'd love Mitch off the ball and with the way the Celtics can space out, you can take him away from the rim. But I think what they probably need to do is pre-rotate and force the Celtics into try to making skip passes. Like they're giving up the one pass away. So like if you're giving up one pass away, it makes everything a lot harder. So in the sense of so even if the rotations are not coming to KP beforehand, right? So if you're going to, even when they're trapping KP or trapping the ball handler when they run a pick and roll, that rotation from whoever should be coming over to KP is late. It's not on time, or it's not early. And I think they need to make that earlier and force, if you're running a pick and roll, leave the opposite corner open. Dare them to make that pass. I would see that.
Yeah. I do think there's some things they can go to the well with. I think that's a problem that's come back to bite them a lot against Philadelphia in the past. There was that one game, I think Christmas last year, where I think Niang went off in the fourth because they kept helping one pass away on Harden. So I think that's a fair point. Pre-rotating, something they haven't done a whole lot of, but we've seen Thibs start to adapt his defense and try some new things. It requires all 5 guys to have attention to detail, and they have 8 guys in the rotation right now who are great at that. I don't think that, but I mean, I think there's other things you can try too. I am curious how it would look if you did put a smaller defender on KP more. I wonder if the Knicks can just flat out switch more, because if he's going to go one-on-one with the guard, I think you'd like your odds there. I mean, do you think switching is an answer at all, even beyond pre-rotating? Because it seems a little bit simpler to implement.
I don't think switching is a very good idea against Boston, unless you're going to. I think it's easier with Hartenstein because I feel like he moves a little bit better in space right now than Mitch does. But even then, he's like foul prone, right? So you can get him up in the air, and that creates problems. I don't really know if the Knicks have. They could switch 1 to 4, and maybe you're fine giving up if
I mean, it's Drew, right? I'm not worried about Drew Holiday and ISO or something like that, or Derek White. That's kind of part of it, right? The Celtics guards are probably their least dangerous players.
Yeah, if they have like Horford out, I think it's a lot easier. Then you can just take Mitch on Horford and roll with, and then you can start switching. But like, I think it's really hard if KP is the 5.
Well, if the guard is still the same, like that's my point, right? Do I trust Mitch on like Derek White or Drew Holiday? I kind of do. I trust him on Tatum because it's Tatum isn't like this, like, he really wants to get to his step backs, right? So I'm curious, why would you think that Horford versus KP is kind of the deciding factor there?
Because I think if Mitch is on Horford, then he's not somebody I'm worried about. Like, oh, he can take Mitch off the bounce, and I think Mitch can help off. Like, if the worst thing that's going to happen is Horford gets an open 3, then it's whatever.
Right, but if Mitch is guarding a pick and roll and he switches, then he's not on KP in that point anyway, right? Or are you just saying you don't want Mitch guarding KP? Period.
I don't want Mitch on KP if this is how we're going to defend the pick and roll, and I don't
On
think
switches?
you can just switch everything.
Or you don't want him on KP if we're defending the way we are. Understood, but okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that if they are going to have Mitch on KP, I would prefer to switch than kind of what they're doing or playing drop. But yeah. So going forward, what do you as the schedule continues to stay the way it is? What are you kind of looking beyond things we discussed to see?
What would I want to see against KP?
No, just the schedule as the moving on from Boston, right? As the Knicks go forward, what are they're 5-5. Schedules isn't lightening up. What are you kind of anticipating? What are you're looking to see in the next like 10 games?
I mean, looking at the schedule, I would like the Knicks to be like 13-7 by the 20 game mark. I think that's probably a fair thing to look for. I mean, I guess that's 8-2, so maybe that's a little bit aggressive. 12-8, 7-3. I'm just looking at the Knicks schedule. So you get the Hawks tomorrow, Wizards Friday, Hornets Saturday. Like that's a stretch you can conceivably go 3-0, even with the back-to-back. Monday at Minnesota is a tough one. Then you get Miami at home, which is always tough because they're fucking annoying. But the Knicks do
3
have they have Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday off, so that's good. Sunday, next Sunday they play Phoenix at the Garden. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then they play the Hornets again at home. They play the Pistons after that. Let's call that a win. So let's say the Knicks are that's 1, 2, 3. The Knicks, I have them at 4-2 there, 5-2, 6-2. They play the Raptors on the road. They have a back to. They have that weird thing. So it's December 1st against the Raptors, and then depending on the results of the in-season tournament, I don't know when their next game is. Right now, it's scheduled to be the Raptors on December 11th. It will not be the Raptors on December 11th. It'll be something in between. But so those next 9 games anyway, I think the Knicks can go 6-3, 7-2. Sure, yeah. I mean, I do think if you get to 20 games in and they're 11-9 or 10-10, but the underlying the net rating is really good and that stuff, will eventually pick it up. I'd be more worried about it if we're at 10-10 and the net rating is even, or it's just barely positive, or if it's negative. Then I think you have something to really worry about. But if we're at 10-10, but our net rating is what it is now, it's plus 4.1, I would not be worried.
And from a stylistic standpoint, or just kind of, there's been a lot of good things, a lot of bad things. What do you think are the easiest things to fix that, you're looking to see? Is it Brunson progressing in terms of his shot making back to what we were used to? Is it, more, I mean, the ball movement, maybe it is what it is. I'm curious though, what you think can change or should change or immediately, or if there's anything like that you'd expect.
Well, I don't know. What would you expect?
I do think Brunson's going to just shoot the ball a lot better than he has been. I think that I can honestly see Barrett finishing this season over 40% from 3. He's done it before. Shooting the ball really well. I think I do think they're going to try some more. I think they're going to experiment a little bit more on defense just because of how dominant Mitch has been. I actually disagree a little bit. I think he's moving even better than Hartenstein on defense. Um, and I'm also curious if we see more. Thibs has gone to small lineups more than I expected. So I think you'll see more of that. I think you'll see Randall switching a lot more as well. So I'm curious to see, I guess, now that they've established a pretty good baseline and they have an identity on defense, I'm curious to see if they experiment a little bit more. I think that it's just seeing the ball go in more for Brunson, and it started to, particularly from three, is going to be interesting. And now we can start thinking about, he's shooting 43% from three, by the way. So, and on a higher volume. So that kind of leap we all expected, is that going to continue? And yeah, just any kind of return. I think the other thing I'll say with Julius is the lows are a little bit worse when even his better games are like 26, 25 on middling efficiency. Like last year, or even the year before, you could take some of those uninspiring performances when the upside was 45 points, right? Or he was dropping those just monster games. We haven't seen a Julius monster game either, right? That'll probably quiet a lot of us too. So those are some of the things I'm curious to see. Like, do we get a Julius heater? Do we see more experimentation on defense? And now that Brunson seems to be rounding into form, just how high is it going to go?
I think Brunson will probably go up at some point soon. I'm just more concerned of like his balance between scoring and decision making right now, like playmaking, I guess, very specifically. I don't feel like he's found the right balance. And I also feel like he's playing, I don't want to say he's not blinders. That's not the right word, but it feels like he's not finding the right open man consistently. Like he's deferring at weird times to Julius, where I don't think he needs to. And it's like, it feels like the only person he's really concerned about getting going ever is Julius. And he doesn't do it in a way where he's like, oh, I'm going to create easier offense for Julius. He's doing it in a way, he's doing it in a way that it's still like kind of just making Julius have to create in an ISO heavy situation. So, yeah, I don't know. Brunson's a weird one for me. Like, I feel like I'm being overly critical of him at times, but I just expect more from him. And I am disappointed in terms of like, he's done nothing to me or for me, or he's done nothing as far as I'm concerned to get Grimes going at all this season. Not once. I don't think he's done a good enough job with that. And I think it's actually pretty ridiculous. I think that the assist rate of that starting group by itself says something about him as a player. And look, he's gotten up this really good start the last couple of games. How many assists has he had? Like
4 yesterday, I think.
Yeah, and he had 1 against. And I don't think this means he's playing selfishly, but over a long enough sample, his lack of playmaking has not been where you want it to be. So I have been pretty disappointed, I think, in his offensive play so far this year, beyond just shot making. I don't think it's just shot making. I think it's, to me, he's not even playing as well in terms of point guarding as he did last year. And quite honestly, I think there's an argument to be made that when he's on the floor to Quickly, I'd much rather see Quickly initiate the offense and have Brunson play off ball. Because
the same thing with RJ?
No, because I think that's RJ's ball handling is not. You want him attacking kind of the way he does, coming around the screens off of pistol action or whatever, to get in the paint. I don't think you want him top of the key running a high pick and roll. That's just not what he's really great at or particularly good at. I am disappointed in Brunson's play so far through 10 games. I don't think that, like, I can't sit here the entire summer and be like, oh, he's a top 15 guy, like whatever, and this be okay. Like, this is not an okay level of play for him. He should be much better, and he needs to be better. If the Knicks actually harbor hopes of moving beyond where they were last year, a lot of it comes down to him and Randall playing better. Like, Quickly had a bad game yesterday. Quickly's been over 10 games better than Brunson, better than Randall. RJ Barrett over 10 games, better than Brunson, better than Randall. Mitchell Robinson over 10 games, better than Brunson, better than Randall. Like, those two guys are supposed to be your best players. How many games would you say they've been our best players? In Brunson's case, I would say maybe
Milwaukee.
last night in Milwaukee. Randall's case, I'm
No.
not. I don't know what game he's been our best player in. I don't know. I'm sure that there's one that I'm totally forgetting, but he just has not had a great start to the season. And I know the ankle thing. Okay, I get it. But like these are just the facts. If those two guys are not our two best players, and they are still in the like, if we're still using them and operating as if they are our two best players, we have problems. And we will not necessarily have problems, but we will underperform our expectations, and we will not show progression from where we were last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What do you think? I mean, is there anything in particular? Like, why do you think it was working better with Brunson as point guard last year? We had, it was he's never going to be Tyrese Halliburton as a playmaker, but 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. What do you think is driving? Is it personnel? Is it, and do you give him any credit for kind of the start? If you're going to say he hasn't gotten Grimes going, do you think he's helped at least facilitate for RJ a little bit?
Maybe, I don't know.
The first question I had is, I mean, what do you think is why is Brunson struggling relative to last year? Because last year we accepted he's a score first guy, but to your point, it wasn't like this bad. He had a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. What do you think the big difference is?
I just think he just got off to a bad start. Like the assist turnover ratio is picking up, and it's, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was FIBA. A lot of those FIBA guys didn't get off to a great start. Reeves has struggled. Halliburton struggled initially. Now he's playing really well. Great, actually, unfortunately. Hart struggled, right? He's talked about it. Even RJ talked about, it took a lot out of him. Obviously, he's gotten off to a great start, though. So, I don't know, maybe just something with that. But to me, it just feels like teams they adjusted a little bit to how we are playing and how we played last year. And there's a adaptation process going on for us as a group and individually. But I still expect more from him, and I think he has to be better. He has to make better reads. I still don't love some of the shot making decisions he's making. He had a couple of really bad choices at the end of the first half. He got bailed out on one where he put up some dog shit shot that somehow went in. And I think one thing very specifically with him, he's not getting some calls that I think he was accustomed to getting last year, and he is forcing the action to try to get those calls at times. That is putting him in bad positions, and he's got to get the fuck over that. Like, either adjust that they're not giving that call, or just avoid it entirely. Like, there's nothing else to be said about that. You're either going to get the call or you're not. You can complain about it, but if once you let it affect your decision making on the floor, that's a problem. He's got to be better than what he's been so far.
Do you think players mentally, if they go into a place like TD Garden, expect to not get calls? Do you think that players should and do adapt to that? Or I'm curious, because last night it definitely, the Knicks lost that game on their own merits, but like that take foul, there's definitely seemed to be some horrible calls that went against the Knicks. So I'm curious if you think that players are conscious of that and adapt to that at a place, especially a place like Boston.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, I guess.
Do you think so? You don't do you think players are conscious that, we're gonna get screwed in Boston and take that into account when they?
I don't think the Knicks got screwed yesterday.
I mean, that's not why they lost, but I mean, like that take foul was a bad call. Like, you're probably gonna.
Yeah, but you're gonna get bad calls on the road. Like, they didn't lose. You lost by the game by 16 points.
Oh yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm curious because you mentioned Brunson kind of not getting some calls. They've also gone into some tough road environments. They played Boston, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, but and part of it is also like early in the season, refs have these points of emphasis that they make a very big priority on, we've got to make sure that we have this down, and I think that's part of it as well. But you've got to adjust, and for example, RJ Barrett is dealing with a lot of the same stuff. He's not getting some of the calls maybe that he thinks he deserves, and whatever. But I've seen him adjust. I've seen him play well. I've seen him get the fuck over it and figure it out. Same with Emmanuel Quickly. I don't think he's getting a lot of the. I mean, yesterday I thought if there's one guy who got a bad whistle yesterday, I thought it was Quickly. But in general, he's not getting a lot of the same calls that he was accustomed to getting previously, and he's adjusted pretty well. So it's like you can sit there and fight against the system and rail against it, or you can just move on. And like, I think in Brunson's case, like, I just feel like he's allowed some of these bad officiating decisions or poor officiating decisions or inconsistent ones, whatever, to get the best of him. I will say there was one play yesterday before we wrap up here, because I know you got to go. The foul that quickly had on Porzingis' three, it was a foul. That was also a flop by the definition of the rules by the NBA officials. Like, that was a flop. But they said, right, when they called the foul, they were like, oh, we missed the call on Brunson, but he did embellish it, and therefore that can still be a flop. I've never seen Emmanuel Quickly touching Porzingis on his like forearm or whatever should not necessitate him falling back 5 feet. If that is not an embellishment, I don't know what is.
Prime bloody Divac there.
That was crazy. That there's not a more blatant flop than that. So NBA officials do better. Figure out what you're trying to call and figure out what you're not.
Before we get out, I do want to ask. So I think there was someone put up like an ESPN odds playoff predictor, and I think it had the Knicks at third, and I think they're like 91% to make the playoffs. Milwaukee's all the way down at 39%, which to me seems like a massive overreaction. They have had some issues. Dame has struggled a little bit. Are you worried or concerned about Milwaukee at all? Not as a Knicks fan, just in general. Like, do you think, like, is it time for maybe the alarms to going off for some people in Milwaukee?
Yes, I'm very, very worried about that team. I think they might actually just be bad.
Even with Dame and like, missed the playoffs bad, or just like, Heat last year bad? Like, I mean, why? Because they still have Dame and Giannis and, Middleton and a lot of talent, right?
Yeah, but like, it's just Dame and like, who on that team aside from Lillard and Giannis would you look at and you're like, I would love to have this guy in the next rotation. Maybe Brook,
Middleton.
I mean Middleton, but like, yeah, you'd like to have him in the next rotation, but he's not Middleton. Like, he's not what he was 2 years ago before the injury. He's not what he was when they made the finals. He's a very reduced player. Still good. He still has his moments, but he's not an all-star anymore, right? He's not an all-star caliber player anymore. That's a problem for them, especially given, like, I don't think Portis is as good as he was a few years ago. Their defense has fallen off. They don't have athleticism. Like, their most athletic players, like obviously Giannis, but aside from that is what, Beauchamp? That's one guy. Like, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't keep Javon Carter. That feels like a really poor decision. I didn't understand that at the time. I don't understand it now. Cam Payne is not good. Like, he's a terrible defender. He's fine. He's just not. He doesn't help them with anything they really need help with. He's not a particularly great initiator, and he's also just a really weak defender. So, I don't know. They look like they're in trouble to me.
Like, miss the playoffs trouble, or you think? But
no, they'll make the playoffs because you have Giannis and you have Shaw, or you have and you have Giannis and you have Dame. But like, they'll make the playoffs. But I would be this is where I'm at. Considering they kind of don't have any moves to make, like, they're kind of boxed in. I feel pretty good about my chances right now to get to the Eastern Conference Finals finally, if I were Philly.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So, one, is it fair to say you would take the Knicks over the Bucks in the 7-game series right now?
Yeah, I would. I know that we lost them, but I thought they got really, really lucky in that game, and I can't imagine it playing. If you play that same exact game, even without RJ Barrett 100 times, I think the Knicks win, 90% of them? I mean, they outshot them from three. Or the Knicks got outshot from three, but they had more shot attempts. They got to the line more. I think they turned the ball over less. Giannis went 3 of 3 from the 3-point line. Like, how fucking often is that going to happen? I think Beauchamp made 2 threes also. Like, they got a lot of good stuff going their way in that game. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So, one, do you think losing their coach or Budenholzer being out has played a role in that, or do you think it's mostly just personnel? Sounds like you think it's personnel, right?
Yeah.
Because Vestany, I think, had a tweet yesterday where he said, it was not critical of the coach, but he said they haven't done anything that Budenholzer hadn't done for them. The other part of this is do you think Philly this is what we can expect going forward? One, do you think there's any regression from Maxey? And in general, do you think this is legitimately a contender, or will they, fall back to earth a little bit? Because so far, post Harden trade, it looks like everything's working out well.
I think that they'll probably fall back a little bit. Like I don't know that. I know everybody's like Maxey, most improved player. He's gonna be all NBA. It's been 10 games, and I think they've had a pretty easy start to the season aside from what they played the Celtics. I think aside from that, their schedule has been pretty light. So I'm still pumping the brakes on like they're a contender like that. I don't know about that, but they do have some draft capital now, right? They do have some contracts they can move with like Covington and all these dudes they got for Harden. They have some movable contracts. Oubre should be back. Oubre, I can't believe I'm saying this. Oubre has been really, really good for them, and I hope he. By the way, best wishes to him. Obviously, pretty awful thing, but like he's been really good for them. At some point, he should be back. So you'd think that would be a nice little bump for them. Their bench is still pretty bad. Like they're not bad, but like they just don't get much scoring off their bench, which is a problem. So over the full season, I still don't know that they're a contender, but I think they have the chance to potentially make a move to become one. And they have time now. And because Milwaukee is playing so poorly, and I don't really see it getting better, I think they have a pretty decent chance of being the second best team in the conference and making a conference finals again. So like they, we'll see what happens, but they definitely have an opening here. And yeah, I think they have a pretty decent chance of capitalizing on it.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. That's a good place to end it. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPad89 on Twitter. And I will plug fuck the Big Ten Conference. Go Blue.
Yes. Fuck the Big Ten. Sign stealing, very, very serious criminal issue that the federal government should look into because they have nothing better to do. That is our show for today. I have nothing to plug, so I'll just plug all the wonderful work at the Strickland. Check out the podcast. Check out the rundown. Sam and Jeff doing great work on there. Articles, recaps. We just Joe Flynn now writing for the site. He's been doing some good recaps, so definitely check those out. And aside from that, just want to thank Bet Online, our wonderful one for sponsor. That is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.